In the unfolding drama of international politics, the growing tensions between the United States, Iran, and Venezuela have become one of the most complex geopolitical flashpoints of the modern era, especially as reports surface suggesting that Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has been armed with advanced Iranian drone technology, a development that could reshape not only the balance of power in Latin America but also the global security architecture at large. The notion that Iranian reconnaissance, armed, and kamikaze drones, already battle-tested in the Middle East against U.S. forces and their allies, could now be stationed in South America sends shockwaves through Washington, because the United States has historically viewed Latin America as its strategic backyard under the Monroe Doctrine, a sphere of influence where foreign powers were never meant to gain footholds. Yet now, with Iranian experts allegedly present in Venezuelan air bases like El Libertador in Maracay overseeing covert drone production lines, the specter of Tehran projecting its military influence thousands of miles beyond the Middle East has become a reality, one that could empower Maduro's embattled regime against both internal opposition and external American pressure, while simultaneously giving Iran an unprecedented opportunity to retaliate against U.S. actions without directly engaging in the volatile Middle Eastern theater. The rise of drone warfare itself adds another layer of complexity, because unlike traditional weapon systems, drones are relatively inexpensive, highly versatile, and extremely difficult to intercept, making them ideal tools for asymmetric warfare, and if Venezuela begins deploying them, whether against drug cartels, regional rivals, or in potential proxy strikes against U.S. assets, the consequences would be destabilizing not only for Latin America but for the entire Western Hemisphere. Donald Trump, during his presidency, frequently floated the idea of striking Venezuelan targets under the justification of fighting drug cartels, a narrative that conveniently masks broader geopolitical aims. And while some critics argue that such rhetoric was more about domestic posturing than actual military planning, the reality is that U.S. intelligence has consistently warned about the deepening ties between Caracas and Tehran, as well as with Moscow and Beijing, creating what many analysts describe as a new Cold War scenario where multiple revisionist powers collectively challenge Washington's dominance in regions long considered untouchable. The implications of this are profound, because if Iran can operationalize drones on Venezuelan soil, it effectively gains a launchpad to harass or threaten U.S. interests far closer to home, turning the Caribbean and South America into contested zones of influence, while simultaneously signaling to Washington that any attempt to corner Iran in the Middle East could be met with retaliatory measures in America's own hemisphere. Beyond the military aspect, the economic and humanitarian dimensions of this crisis cannot be ignored, since Venezuela is already mired in hyperinflation, food shortages, and mass migration, and the introduction of advanced foreign military hardware only exacerbates the suffering of ordinary people who may be caught between authoritarian governance, foreign interventions, and proxy warfare, while at the same time risking the proliferation of drone technology to non-state actors such as drug cartels or militant groups who could exploit these systems for criminal or terrorist activities, thereby multiplying the threats to U.S. homeland security. Furthermore, if Washington decides to respond militarily, either through direct strikes or covert operations aimed at dismantling drone facilities, the possibility of escalation into a larger regional conflict becomes dangerously real, particularly if Russia or China choose to back Venezuela diplomatically, militarily, or economically as part of their broader strategy to undermine American hegemony, thereby creating a scenario in which the Western Hemisphere, once a relative safe zone from great power conflict, transforms into a new battleground for proxy wars. This dynamic highlights the broader transformation of the international system into a multipolar world, where the U.S. can no longer dictate terms unilaterally, and adversaries like Iran can exploit shifting alliances and geographic opportunities to counter American dominance, making the Venezuelan drone issue not merely a bilateral dispute but a symptom of deeper structural changes in global politics that could reshape security doctrines, economic stability, and even the trajectory of U.S. foreign policy for decades to come, because the truth is that if Maduro, backed by Iran's technological and military expertise, manages to entrench himself further, it will embolden other regimes defying Washington, proving that resistance against American sanctions and pressure is viable when supported by rival powers, thereby weakening the credibility of U.S. deterrence worldwide. Ultimately, what we are witnessing is not just about drones, Venezuela, or Trump's rhetoric about drug cartels, but about the emergence of a dangerous new reality where conflicts are no longer geographically confined, where technology allows adversaries to project power across continents, and where the very idea of American security, once assured by geography and naval supremacy, is now vulnerable to low-cost, high-impact weapons operated by hostile regimes within striking distance of its shores, raising urgent questions about how the U.S. will adapt its strategy. whether through military escalation, diplomatic engagement, or technological countermeasures, because if mishandled, this crisis could spiral into a wider war whose repercussions would reverberate across the globe and push the international order closer to the brink of chaos.